Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Wrestling Hypothesis Extra. That's right, the inaugural episode of Wrestling Hypothesis Extra, the secondary show of the Wrestling Hypothesis podcast, here for your Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. I'm Davey, of course. If you listen to our weekly shows, you know this. Joining me this week is Richard.
Hello, everyone.
And Ricardo.
What's up?
Okay, so we realize that there is simply way too much news, big and small, that is being broken and reported in the world of pro wrestling nonstop to try to fit in all of that within our weekly show. So we decided a better way to accommodate that is to space out the news we hear throughout the week and come on here and discuss it and give our thoughts on each of them. And unlike the weekly episodes of Wrestling Hypothesis properly, there won't really be a set time of the week that we will be releasing this brand new series on YouTube. So you can get extra on Wednesday, 1 week, for instance. Then we do the weekly show over the weekend and not have an extra until the following Thursday, for example. Okay, but before we get into it with this first episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on this brand new series whenever we decide to drop on the YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can check out episode 27 from this past week. A lot of great debates on there that we tackled, or any of our older episodes in the archives using any of the platforms we are available on, as well as visiting our own website, anchor.fm/wrestling-hypothesis.
Right. Hit that subscribe button, y'all.
Don't forget the like and the like button.
And the like.
Okay. First things first. So it's been confirmed that after Monday Night Raw's taping, Kairi Sane was leaving the WWE. This past Monday, she faced Bayley in a non-title match in which she was victorious. She'll also be on Raw next week since they taped 2 episodes on the same day. She is most likely to move to Japan to be with her husband, do a year of wrestling there, and then officially retire. However, since I found out yesterday that WWE is doing whatever it takes to keep her from leaving to go to another wrestling company, mainly AEW, since AEW has a high profile in Japanese wrestlers.
Yeah, this is so typical of WWE, you know? And we first discussed this a few weeks back on the news that Kairi Sane was looking to not renew her contract with WWE. That was set to expire by that point pretty soon, with the intention of going back to Japan to be closer to her husband and possibly wrestle for another year over there before officially calling it quits with wrestling and retire. It really does suck that Kairi, when all was said and done, hasn't amounted to anything really significant in her time in WWE once she got called up to the main roster last year. She was NXT Women's Champion for a few months, beating Shayna Baszler in TakeOver Brooklyn 4. And honestly, a great surreal moment. We were both there live for that event, Richard, if you know. That place went elated when Sane won the title in that match. Then she dropped the title at Evolution, stuck around in NXT until she got called up, and was stuck in a pairing with Asuka, which sounded like a great idea to get her better introduced and accustomed to the mainstream and casual audience at first. But they did nothing with those two for a good 4 to 6 months before finally giving them the women's tag titles, and they had a solid reign throughout. But not long after dropping those titles at WrestleMania earlier this year, Kairi was immediately phased out, as they were giving Asuka more of the shine and the spotlight as a single star. And meanwhile, Kairi was getting injured at the hands of Nia Jax, how could we forget that, and wasn't seen on TV for weeks at a time. And don't get me wrong, she beat the SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley on Raw this past week in what looks to be her final appearance with the company. But even that didn't make much sense on the face of it, because Kairi is 1 foot out the door. She's gone already. Why give her a win against the Women's Champion? I don't get that logic. I really don't.
For Kairi Sane, you could tell that she was very uncomfortable in the main roster, right? The only person she would work well with was Asuka and a few other females in the roster, right? She said like she might go back to New Japan Pro Wrestling.
New Japan Pro Wrestling does not have a women's division at all.
Okay. But at the same time, that's where she's most comfortable at. But if there was a place that she would arguably dominate, it's AEW, because they have more Japanese wrestlers in the United States there than any other wrestling promotion. Hell,
right, they have an unofficial Joshi women's division over there.
Exactly. Hell, you can make a case she will dominate because Kairi Sane is nice in the ring, right? So I think she would honestly do that. and stuff like that, and a better way to format her skills on her way out. That's what I would say. If I was Kairi Sane, I would go to AEW and finish my career off strong and show WWE what it's truly like, how they missed a great opportunity by not using Kairi Sane more effectively in the main roster.
Right. And no, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, when it comes to Kairi Sane, it is a big letdown, especially the fact how when we first saw Kairi Sane at NXT, she was really used perfectly. She became NXT Women's Champion. She had a great rivalry with Shayna Baszler, and then the minute that they called her up, they pretty much put her with Asuka, because she's Japanese, and then the rest is kind of history. So it does suck at the fact that Kairi was treated like this. Am I surprised that she's leaving WWE? No, because who wouldn't want to leave WWE after the way that they've been treated? Come on.
Yeah, and at that point, you just know that they're in it for the money, and the passion's just not there anymore if they decide to keep sticking around and not being used on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that from that sense and everything I just pointed out a little bit earlier, that WWE mishandled her in so many ways that you can't even imagine. And any other company would honestly be very lucky to have someone like Kairi on their women's roster, like Ricardo mentioned, AEW. But she wants to go back to Japan. She seems pretty set in her ways on that. And so I end with this news. I end with best of luck to Kairi in her future, and hopefully she's very happy when all is said and done.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is pretty much what happened this past weekend on Slammiversary, when a number of released WWE stars such as EC3, Heath Slater, Gallows Anderson, Eric Young, and a bunch of others is now on Impact Wrestling. Eric Young is now in a world title feud with Eddie Edwards in Impact Wrestling. EC3 is now in a picture with Moose. Gallows Anderson is in a picture within the tag team division, and so on and so forth. And also this past Tuesday on Impact Wrestling, what's his name? Kurt Hawkins. Kurt Hawkins was shown as well about coming up very soon on Impact Wrestling. So it really goes to show that, and at this point, the top three main promotions, WWE, Impact Wrestling, and AEW, really wants to get these names, but Impact Wrestling took the battle of the barrel here that they just released, and now they're shown into TV. Because Slammiversary this past weekend was actually a really good event. I rewatched it the other day, and it was a really good show.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Slammiversary was a pretty good show from what I caught the other day. But yeah, it has now been over 90 days since Black Wednesday, a day where over dozens of WWE talent and their staff were either released or furloughed from the company back in April. Mm-hmm. A day that will go on to live in infamy in pro wrestling, as we have never truly seen a day where so many employees in a wrestling promotion were released all at once like that. We've had instances here and there, like where they would release over a dozen talents, but not to the level that we have seen just a few months ago, back in April. And because of the fact that they were all released, they automatically had a 90-day no-compete clause hanging over their heads, meaning that they can't really work in any other wrestling promotion that has TV in that time span. The 90 days have since come and gone, as of just last week, I believe it was. And almost immediately, some of those released talents wasted no time whatsoever in going to other companies, namely Impact Wrestling, who hosted, like Richard said, their big Slammiversary event this past Saturday evening. And we had no shortage of familiar faces here at the show, including the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, of former OC fame in WWE alongside AJ Styles. And I know King Kenny, who is not here on this edition of Extra, would have a field day with this news. Because for those who don't listen to our weekly show, he has had quite a few things to say about those two. And I forget who it was out of all of us, but someone did bring up them coming over to Impact as a possibility, and it did come true. And good for them. Hope they light it up over there and they still have that fire and desire to do better.
Really?
What?
In terms, TNA is the one wrestling company, as far as I'm concerned, that always picks up the leftovers from WWE. Okay?
Yeah, they have built their reputation up over the years.
EC3, Eric Young, the Good Brothers, which is one of the most lamest names I've ever heard, right? And who else is there?
Heath Slater,
Heath
Kurt Hawkins,
Slater, and Kurt Hawkins. You see what I mean? They picked up the leftovers that no one truly gives a damn about, and TNA picked them up, right? In terms of Slammiversary, good for them. I ain't knocking that, but who cares? Like, it's TNA. TNA has built a reputation where they are not truly consistent with their work, right? They used to have that back then where everyone was in their prime, like with Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, and the rest of them. But right now, nobody gives a damn about TNA. Nobody gives a damn if they picked up Kurt Hawkins or the Good Brothers or Heath Slater and all these guys. They don't care because their value and their worth has plummeted over the years. So it doesn't really matter if Slammiversary had a good show or whatever. Who in their right mind is watching TNA in this generation? The top two promotions I care about is WWE and AEW. If the rest of promotion isn't WWE or AEW, I ain't watching it. I don't care which one.
Don't be harsh on New Japan right now.
No. I'm not sleeping on New Japan, but I don't.
You just said WWE and AEW were the only two promotions that you watch.
But hold on. But the thing is, New Japan is in correlation with AEW, so they're with them. They're partnered with AEW, so technically, to some degree, I am watching New Japan.
They partner with them on a few occasions. They're not outright doing business.
But to some degree, but the fact that they partnered with AEW, to some degree, I am watching New Japan and their style. Okay, so if it ain't AEW, if it ain't WWE, I ain't watching it. I don't care about TNA. I don't care about Ring of Honor. And hell, even if I did try to watch New Japan, I don't know how because I don't have the channel or the subtitles to watch it. Okay, like other than that, I don't care about TNA Slammiversary. That's what hell, they try to bring up so many legends. So to say, they try to bring Bully Ray. They try to bring in Devon. I heard about shit about Devon and the beautiful people. I heard about that, and then nobody came. Right? So Slammiversary, bravo. But in terms of the Good Brothers, I leave that to Kenny. I'm gonna leave that to Kenny. But other than that, I don't give a damn about Slammiversary. I don't give a damn about TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Before we continue, the Good Brothers. They said, I remember I saw something that the Good Brothers was extremely close of signing a deal with AEW. Like very, very close. But the reason why they turned it down was because Impact Wrestling was offering them more money. Triple H, before they left, Triple H said to the Good Brothers, to them personally, if you have a problem with going to the main roster, I will gladly take you down to NXT and you can flourish right there. But at this case, it won't even make a difference because, like, for Gallows and Anderson, they've been tarnished so much in the main roster, it'll be so hard for us to care about them. They lost so much credibility, even with Styles or not with Styles. They lost so much credibility while they were up there, and they were wasted so much. It's pretty much now a lost cause.
Well, it's like this. It's like this. It shows to you that Gallows and Anderson mostly care about their money than care about the competition. Don't get me wrong. When you got to go to work, you got to go to work to pay the bills.
Of course.
That goes for anybody.
Right? But the fact that AEW, that they were signed too close to AEW, in my opinion, their tag team division is so stacked.
They don't need to be there.
Exactly. They're extremely stacked. And they are extremely stacked. And hell, if they went in WWE, if they stayed in WWE, they would have either stayed where they are, or they would have plummeted even more, right? That's why they went to TNA and into an organization where they know they'll be number one as soon as they step forward in the brand. Because they knew that Gallows and Anderson both knew that they weren't going to do jack shit in both AEW and WWE. That's why they went to a sorry ass promotion in TNA where they walked into the door. They know that they'll be the best team in the game, only in TNA. That's why they downgraded. They downgraded. Their tag team division is trash over there, and they have no choice but to go to TNA.
They signed a 2-year deal, so after 2 years, after 2 years, it's going to be really interesting to see where they're going to go.
I don't give a damn what happens in 2 years. In 2 years, who gives a shit about Gallows and Anderson? They might as well retire or train their daughters or sons how to be wrestlers in the future. I don't give a damn what happens in 2 years with TNA. Or with Gallows and Anderson.
Damn, Ricardo, you're just playing Kenny's representative here of his thoughts and feelings towards them.
It's whatever. If I'm Kenny's representative, by all means, I'm Kenny's representative. That's my boy.
Okay.
Okay. Well, one sec. Before we move on, I want to say a few more things. Yeah, but we had also Heath Slater as a part of the Impact roster, and his old partner Rhino has been there as well since last year after leaving WWE. Wouldn't surprise me if they decide to pair the two of them together again, honestly, and rekindle some of that fire that they had a few years prior in WWE. Kurt Hawkins is on his way over there as well, as they aired a video package hyping his appearance in the company. EY, Eric Young, the former Impact Heavyweight Champion back in 2014, is back with the company as well, entering himself in the main event of the show, a 5-way elimination match for the vacant Impact World title. He was eliminated by Rich Swann, a name we haven't heard much of in a while. So, a nice big impression upon his return for Eric Young. And finally, we had another wasted talent in EC3, a former 2-time Impact World Champion during his previous tenure with the company, make his anticipated return to Impact, where, among other names, he was honestly the most wasted in his WWE run, where he was mostly plodding away at secondary shows like main events and would lose more so than win. He made an appearance at the very end of the show in a backstage segment as the event faded to black. And honestly, this was the best thing that could have happened at EC3. And you could argue that AEW should have been his next destination, but I don't even know about that. That's pretty much up in the air for me.
It's like I said, they picked up the leftovers. Right? They picked up the leftovers. And if EC3 went to AEW, I don't think he would have made any noise anyway. Right?
I agree with that.
All the names that you just mentioned are honestly irrelevant to me. The Heath Slater and Rhino. Rhino's been finished. That fat fuck went back to TNA. He went back and forth between WWE and TNA, right? Heath Slater, I don't give a Brock Lesnar, in terms of Brock Lesnar, I don't give a fuck about his kids. I don't care. Heath Slater, because of WWE made Heath Slater into a complete joke, okay? And the same thing goes with the Kurt Hawkins and all the other stars that went to TNA, right? By all means, forget them. Let's move on. They're nobodies.
All right.
Oh yeah, let's move on from that.
So, also in other news, now this one is very interesting. So, for the past couple of weeks, Bray Wyatt has been on TV, obviously. This past Sunday at Extreme Rules, Bray Wyatt faced Braun Strowman in a Wyatt swamp fight. Now, Bray Wyatt is getting a lot of focus as of right now, such as merchandise has been on the rise for him, increasingly popular with the fans, within the character, as well as being pushed heavily on SmackDown as the top dude. Now, since this past Sunday, he returned as the Fiend. Now they're thinking about turning him, the Fiend character, as a face as they get closer to SummerSlam. Now, the main thing is, will a babyface turn for Bray Wyatt as the Fiend actually work?
No. My opinion is no, because
I agree.
Here's my problem. They have so many characters, so to speak, for Bray Wyatt. They can't stick to one. That's number one. right? Number two, they are trying severely hard to make Bray Wyatt the second coming of Mick Foley in terms of character, right? In terms of the Fiend, I think we all agree that the Fiend is his best character.
Oh,
right?
that's
But
no debate.
you can't change. You cannot change him. You can't make him into a face based on an intimidating figure, right? The Fiend characters
Screams heel.
Exactly. It brings the heel dynamic. You can't change the Fiend into a face and see what happens. They're not consistent, right? It's either you make him a face or you make him a heel and stick with it. Stick with one character and you go on with that. The fact that they're changing his character, so to speak, in terms of face or heel, it diminishes the Fiend's character overall. You can't have him face Braun Strowman for the title 1 week as a heel and change him the same week.
To a face.
Exactly. You can't. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And hell, even if he does become when he becomes a face, how are you gonna make that work? How are you gonna make that work? He has to change his whole character completely as the Fiend.
Again.
It won't be the same. It won't be the same. The whole dynamic will change, and people will look at him differently. And then I bet you they will force him to change his character again.
I also will have to agree, because in terms of the Fiend character, like, it just screams heel, because around this time last year, the Fiend came out. When the Fiend came out, that was the best thing that happened at SummerSlam last year. Everyone was paying attention to the Fiend, the way he was booked, the way he personified himself and stuff like that. He screams heel. There's no way in hell that you have a character like that looks like a heel, talks like a heel, and stuff like that. You can't turn him as a face. I just don't see it. And plus, it's already back. His character as the Fiend is already diminished from the start, ever since last fall around Hell in a Cell when he faced Seth Rollins. His character is already diminished, and they try so hard to bring the Fiend character's level way back up there, but you guys already fucked it up last year. So I don't think they should turn the Fiend into a face. Just keep him the way he is as a heel and just work with that. Because ever since COVID started, you've been using Bray and Braun so much, like, we're getting sick and tired of it. So it's like, at this point in terms of the Fiend, you can legitimately say, like, do we even give a fuck anymore about the Fiend?
No, we don't. That's why
exactly.
I'm going to go against the grain here. And I'm going to say, actually, I would prefer him as a heel if they stick him around as a heel in a persona that he's in right now. Because honestly, he can, to a certain extent, he can get back to that same level he was in last year when the Fiend first became a thing. That being said, would I be completely upset if they decide, you know what, fuck it, let's abandon the heel shtick and put him in more of a babyface route, or maybe even a tweener, where it's like he can target anyone, no fucks given? I would not be upset about that.
If it was a tweener, I would agree with you. Yeah,
tweener would work, because honestly, a tweener would suit him probably even more so, because why would he limit himself to just targeting the baby faces?
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. Especially
that's why I think like the badass characters, no fucks given, like Stone Cold and Becky Lynch and honestly, and Dean Ambrose to an extent when he was in WWE, they should have never honestly cared about that kind of stuff. They should have been been stuck in that middle ground, so to speak. That gray area of good and evil. Like, they don't care. Like, they'll target whoever's in their way and in their path to get to the top. I think the Fiend is best suited for that.
Right. And the thing is, if they move them into a face, they will have a hard time with him conducting
with the right opponent,
rivalries, and exactly opponents for him to work with. Like, how can I see
as a fan?
How can I see him face a person like so to speak, like a Daniel Bryan, right? Who's another face, or a Matt Riddle, or stuff like that. Like, it doesn't work. It won't work. So just keep him as a heel, or what, like Abba said, as a tweener, and because being a tweener it's balanced. It's
Yeah.
balanced. Being him as a tweener is balanced. He could face whoever.
Like Finn Balor, he's a tweener right now.
Exactly. You only
Right.
have such a limited amount of limited amount of things you could do and the rivalries you could pursue as a face or a heel, especially a face. A face we know is limited within themselves as a character and what they're capable of getting away with in that role.
Right.
But the best faces in wrestling are some of the best characters we've ever seen. Eddie Guerrero,
True.
Daniel Bryan, etc.,
Cena.
Ricky Steamboat, etc.
Cena.
Yeah, Cena. Exactly. Heels, it goes for them as well. The best heels in history are ones that are mischievous. They don't care, but they're also limited in their own ways.
They're both limited. Face and heel. They're both limited.
Because who's really? Because
No,
who
no,
are
no,
you? Think
not,
about
not,
it.
not
Who
so
are
to
you?
speak.
Wait, Ricardo.
It
Wait a
depends
sec.
on the person.
Wait a sec. Just actually, I do agree with that point, Ricardo. But just to get back to what I was getting at, who the hell will want to feasibly see a heel go up against another heel? There's no one to root for. It would make more sense to do face versus face because you have two people to root for. Unlike heel versus heel, if we're still going by the dimensions of pro wrestling, kayfabe, in that little world, and not just cheering and booing whoever we personally like and don't like. If we're going by WWE's, by wrestling's logic, then why the hell would you want to see heel versus heel? That's why you don't see enough of that, or pretty often.
Back to your point, Richard, it depends on the person who could either be a great face or a great heel. Bray Wyatt, as the Fiend, had potential to be a great heel, but obviously it plummeted down. But the fact that they're now changing his way by possibly making him a face, it can either make him or break him, and that's the problem. Because like the thing is, he was so great as a heel with his character. If you make him a face, it might diminish his character, and most importantly, him. So that's the issue. So it's pretty much saying like you shouldn't fix what's not broken, right? You shouldn't fix what's not broken,
Of course,
right? So in my last word,
The only thing broken is our general interest in him and the character.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, my last word is this. I don't want WWE to make him a face, right?
Because if you make him a face,
keep him as a heel. Keep him as a heel, and stick with it. That's it. No changes should be made with Bray Wyatt. Don't change anything. If there was something that they should change, is changing the world champion and Braun Strowman with a different competitor, other
And
than
change the
Bray
overall
Wyatt.
booking of the Fiend and Bray Wyatt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Make someone make someone beat Braun Strowman, right, for the world title, who we all view, Roman Reigns, right? If there was one guy that should beat him for the world title, it's Roman Reigns. Nobody else. Other than that, I don't see anybody else in the main roster on SmackDown to beat Braun Strowman, because they viewed Braun Strowman as an immovable object.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not for nothing, you have the stars we legitimately want to see in the main event picture, like an AJ Styles or Daniel Bryan, toying away at the mid card. And yes, it's elevating the mid card to a sense, but it's not helping the main event scene it's not doing them any favors, because they just lost two big names.
Exactly, and I don't mind seeing Styles, Matt Riddle, and Bryan for the mid card. I think it's dope, but
you can't keep them there for too long.
You can't keep them for too long, and that's the problem. And that's why I say, if there's a superstar that needs to come back, it's Roman Reigns for SmackDown.
Right. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for listening to our first episode of Wrestling Hypothesis Extra. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We have pages over there, as well as clicking that subscribe button down below. I'm going to keep mentioning that until you guys do, so you are up to date for any content we release. So that's it from us today. We'll be back for episode 28 this upcoming weekend. Until then, have a good one, guys.
Take care.
Peace.